You'll have to excuse the sound of laundry because right now this is the only time I can record this conversation. If you can't handle me at my worst, you sure as hell don't deserve me at my best. I think verbatim that's what the quote is, attributed to Marilyn Monroe. That's all I can find anyway. I've heard it for years and years and years and years, and it's always been attributed to her, and then I try to do some research to make sure that that's the source, and that's all I can find. So if it really came from somewhere else or has a different origin, you'll have to correct me and let me know, but that's all I can find. So something I've heard about for a long time, rolled my eyes at for a long time, and still kind of am eye-rolly about it now. But I did want to talk about it. It was just on my mind just today. I had a different topic I was going to discuss and threw that out the window, and we're going to maybe get to that some other time. But I was thinking about it and trying to think about it a little more in depth than just rolling my eyes at it and ranting about it or thinking about a rant. Just reacting to the stimuli alone without going deeper. And that's kind of what I want to do now because I'm thinking about it and my immediate reaction is negative. My immediate reaction to that quote is, well, what? Your worst? I mean, it depends what your worst is. And why would that be a factor? This has a thing to do with compatibility. It just started snowballing into this conversation that I wanted to have now. But as I was just thinking about it quickly, I was like, it's just a dumb quote. If you can't handle me at my what is your worst? What is anybody's worst? And if you can't handle someone at their worst, you would assume. What does it mean? This is where I went because I was you would assume no one would want to be with anyone who's at their worst. Does it mean the worst that they have been ever, the worst that they're capable of at this moment? What is the worst that you have ever been, or the worst that you are capable of overall? I don't know what that means. I don't know where to start with this. Humans are capable of horrible, horrible, horrible things, right? And to say what my worst is going to be different than someone else's worst. So despite the fact that we are all different humans have different capabilities, whether it be cognitive ability that's different between everyone, or just we all have a different chemical makeup, we all have different factors that have led us to be who we are at this point in time in our lives, our upbringing, our experiences, the way we've dealt with our experiences, the choices we make, obviously, based off of the opportunities that have been given to us or the opportunities we've made for ourselves. All those things are at play here. And so, what is my worst versus someone else's worst? I mean, the capability of everyone to be at their worst, what is... Again, I just keep trying to make a blanket thing about humans in general and how bad and horrible people we could be. But, I mean, my worst is different than someone else's. What if someone else's worst is only half of my worst, and then I guess their worst wouldn't be that bad? Maybe they don't have the capability to be absolutely horrible because it's just not in their makeup, or they just have lived their life in a certain way to never... I don't know. What does that mean? People can make choices to do horrible things, but why would they? I don't know. That's not a part of them. I don't know. This is going off the rails already, which is good for this time because I'm trying to figure this out. So, trying to dissect and reconstruct and figure out the layers to this quote that I think is really dumb. This is kind of related to Not All Those Who Wander Are Lost, which was often misattributed to Alice in Wonderland so much. It's more about the people that share this quote and in the context that they do it or believe it or want to express it or identify with it. It's mostly the people more so than it is the quote in and of itself that I have a problem with. Because the people using it generally are using it to excuse their behavior. Again, it was kind of like the Not All Those Who Wander Are Lost thing. It's trying to excuse your behavior, excuse the fact that you haven't made certain choices or are lazy or haven't gotten your life together yet or whatever, and be I'm content in just being nowhere. And you can be that sincerely in a positive way, kind of, but the people that I see express that, it's a whole different thing. Much like this whole thing in the Marilyn Monroe bit. And so, yeah, it's often just been something that I've never taken seriously or wanted to deconstruct that much. But right now, I was thinking about it in a more serious context and be like, let's break this down into the fact we're going to talk about it in a romantic relationship setting. Let's put it there. And yes, you could probably attribute it to other things, other friendships or types of relationships as well. But why don't we have it here? Because I think that's the context she said it in, and I believe that's the context most people think of it in, including myself. So we have to think about what is your worst, and you being like the other person that is your partner or potential partner or whatever. What is their worst? You don't ever want someone to be at their worst. I don't want to be at my worst. That's not where I want to be. So if someone can't handle me at my worst, I wouldn't blame them. like that's my immediate reaction, but then I keep having to go back to, well, what is my worst? You know what I mean? Like, maybe my worst isn't that bad. I think that my worst could be pretty bad, but that's only because I'm thinking of, like, what is the potential of my worst? Like, what are the choices I could make? But would I make those choices? At certain times in my life, there's choices that I've made, and it was just like, is my worst, in the context of this quote, what I would do or what I could do? Because there's things I could do that I would never do, ever, just as a, not necessarily to a partner or something, but just in life. I'm like, I could do so many things. I can go down the street and kick a dog, and I would never do that. I think there's a lot worse things that you could do than kick a dog, but I mean, like, that's not something I would ever do. It's just not a part of who I am to do that thing. But for some people, that might be, you know, that's this thing that they would go around doing, and that's part of them being their worst. So if they can't handle me at my worst, I think that, again, it's the way it's worded is interesting, because this is why I'm having a discussion about it. Like, I find myself many times saying that I don't want to handle someone when they are at their worst. When they are being their worst, I don't often say I can't, I often say I don't want to, or I'm not here for it. Like, this is not what I want to have to deal with. Because I think the reason I word it that way, or think of it that way and say it that way, is because I recognize that someone's worst is not their norm. Like, right? Like, their worst and their best, those are things outside of the everyday. I think that we could... That's the way it should be. No, that's not true. I think for most people that's where it is, because trying your best every single day, I think, is something that not many people reach, myself included right now. Trying your best every single day, making that a part of your life, making it a habit, making it a routine, something that you just naturally do to try your best every day and set yourself up for success every day. I think that it's something that not a lot of people do. It's not ingrained in them as a lifestyle to do it. Like I said, right now, me included. It's something that I think about a lot, but it's something that I rarely think about before I start my day and put myself on that track to be like, how can I do my best today? What does my best mean? Like, and I think those things should be routine. And there's some people that I think live at their worst frequently, but for most people that I know and the experiences I've had with other human beings, we're in the middle. So that's why we can even say, like, if your best became, I don't know, it's really hard, because if your best became your average, then you would have a new best, is kind of how I'm thinking about this. But really, I mean, if your best is your best, then your average could be your best, and then you wouldn't be able to get much higher. I don't know. I hope that makes sense. Because, I think some people could just be living their worst life all the time, and then there's nowhere else to go further down, or at least not much. And that would be their average daily behavior for the most part. But when I hear this quote, I'm thinking of, like, you're sitting at average, this is the worst and this is the best up here. And if you can't handle this thing down here at my worst, then you can't handle this thing way up here, which is my best. And I think that it would be nice, obviously we all strove to do our best every day, and we were at our best a lot. That would be great. And that's, I'm trying to position myself to be there, and it's definitely not easy because I don't think about it every single day. I don't want someone to have to handle me at my worst. But when I think about that, again, it's like, well, it depends what my worst is. Like, I don't want to be at my worst often in order to ever have to use this phrase. There we go. I think I figured it out already. That's what troubles me. The fact that you would ever use this phrase, to me, means that you're at your worst often enough that you would have to use this phrase to say that you don't deserve me when I'm at my best. Like, you should be at your best way more often than you're at your worst if you're actually trying. If you're actually making an effort to be your best, wouldn't you be there more often? Like, you wouldn't ever have to think about this phrase or think about communicating this to anybody in any type of way to say, well, if you can't handle me when I'm at my worst, like, no, it's like if you can't handle me at my worst because I'm at my worst often, then I guess I'm not doing very well. Like, I'm not doing my part. I'm not doing my best, or I'm not even trying to do my best, or I'm not trying to be, like, or get better. If I'm continually at my worst often, I'm not doing well. I'm not doing great. So I guess you should probably not have to handle that. That's how I would think of it. I thought this was going to take longer to figure out that phrasing. That made it click in my head. But yeah, if you have to use that phrase, I guess you're at your worst often enough to feel that you're wanting to shift responsibility, right? You're wanting to shift responsibility onto somebody else to say that you don't deserve me when I'm doing great because you can't handle, like, everyone. I don't know. But that's the thing, is, like, I think that the other side of this coin, if you want to flip it, if I'm going to give benefit of the doubt and everything else, which I've already kind of negated, is that obviously we're not perfect, everyone's fallible, and that you can't be looking for perfection every single day. That's just not something that we're capable of. Therefore, you can't be constantly criticizing and whatever else, and I don't know how to phrase it. And I think it's because I just trap myself because I criticize all the time. And I notice, I'm too observant and notice things all the time, and whether they be contradictions or whatever else, because I want people to be their best, me included. Like, I'm not exempt from that desire. But because I notice things, I'm like, well, can we try to do something different? Like, we're never going to fix anything if we don't have a conversation and try to, first we have to acknowledge that there was a mistake, and then we have to acknowledge that we would like to correct that mistake, like, in order to move on or make sure we're on the same page or whatever else. So, if we have to acknowledge, I guess, also that we're fallible and whatever else, if we're constantly criticizing somebody else and constantly searching for perfection that will never happen, then you may not deserve that person once they get to a place that is their best, because you have no patience for them to get to their best. I'm trying to read it in, like, this other way, and that's the best I can do with it at the moment. But I've had scenarios where I thought, like, it comes down to capability and compatibility, that there's someone who right now is not living their best life. Like, I hate that phrase. Why did I use it? It's so, ugh. Anyway, there's someone right now who is not doing their best, or their best isn't good enough. Put it that way. Their best isn't good enough. You feel they are capable of doing more, like they're physically capable, they're mentally capable. Maybe they're just not emotionally strong enough at this moment to execute all their abilities, and, you know, they constantly need an escape through laziness and lack of discipline and whatever else. I don't know. Maybe they're not mentally, emotionally capable of doing their best, even though they are capable of those. I don't know how to explain it. If you're capable of doing something, like cognitively able and cognitively capable at executing a thing and physically able of executing it, but you're not mentally, emotionally capable of doing that without falling apart, I guess, if you're not strong enough, then maybe you aren't compatible for someone at that moment because you're not capable at that moment. And I don't think there's any guilt that should be felt if someone determines that someone else is not compatible in their life, in any type of relationship. If that person is not compatible because they are having an experience of incapability for an extended period of time where it is taking away from you or taking away from the relationship, I just don't think that's something that one person can be blamed for determining that this is not a situation that's healthy for them, and saying we're incompatible and I can't be here right now. You're not at your best. Maybe it's not their worst, but you're having a really rough time, and it is not just a small speed bump. This is an extended period of time. But I could see how the other person, and I've played devil's advocate in this scenario and been like, well, I don't think you're going to be here forever, and maybe in a couple of years you'll be exactly what I need right now. But in a couple of years from now, I might need something else. Or in a couple of years from now, maybe my standards will be exactly the same. Maybe my desires and my need in a person, like the things that I need in a relationship, maybe they'll be exactly the same, and you will be able to fit that. But you can't fit it right now, and you haven't been fitting it for an extended period of time, and it's dragging me down, and I'm not happy, and whatever else. So you not being at your best, again, I can't say it's someone being at their worst, but if you're not being at your best right now, like, okay, like that's just, I can't be around for that. And I'm thinking like that maybe that person is going to say like, well, I'm having a really rough time right now, and if you can't handle that, then you don't deserve me when I do get to like my place. I don't know. Obviously, we're complex individuals with a lot of things going on, so it's really hard to make statements sometimes without having caveats, like completely just going crazy and wild and everything. And if I have to have too many caveats in what I'm saying and thinking and feeling, there's no point in saying or thinking and feeling anything, because everything is subject to everything is just subject to maybe this, maybe that. You don't know, and then you can't form an opinion or have any judgments, which are, I think, automatic for a lot of people to make judgments and assumptions and or calculated opinions, informed opinions based off of what we know. Well, you don't know everything, and we have to acknowledge we don't know everything. This is going really off the rails. Yeah, I just, again, if I go back to that thing, I really think that a lot of people who use that phrase are probably in their worst or definitely not their best so frequently that they feel they need to use that phrase in order as a defense mechanism, which should be a clear sign that maybe you need to get your stuff together so that, like, I don't know, I think everyone goes through peaks and valleys, right? Like, we all have difficulties. But to make a blanket statement, especially one that's so cliche and one that's not very personal to the self, in order to defend yourself, is kind of telling. And I think, I don't know if I figured out as much as I thought I was hoping to for my own personal situation, but more in a general situation, I figured some things out, which is good. But I was just trying to wrestle with this whole thing of like, what is, I don't know, I think I came back to stuff I already knew, which is the compatibility and capability part. It's like, okay, well, if someone's there, they're there, and if they're not able, or, yeah, then they're not, and like, what do you do about that situation, except move on, and that's it. Like, I don't know what else you can do there. If you can't handle me at my worst, then you sure as hell don't deserve me at my best. I don't know, that's kind of weird too, like being able to handle someone at their worst. Then you don't deserve them at their best. I don't know, that's a little twisty too. Just the very specific wording, right? Like, I don't know, like I wouldn't be able to handle so many things of people being at their worst, be like, oh, I'm not here for it, like I can't handle this. Like, if this happened repeatedly, you'd be like, no, like I'm losing, like I can't, like this hurts my soul or whatever, so that means I'm not deserving of you at your best. Everyone's deserving of everyone else at their best. That doesn't even make any sense. Like, everyone's deserving of being at their best, and if I'm being at my best, then I would deserve my partner to be at their best. Why would I have to handle them at their worst in order to deserve them at their best? I just don't understand that. Someone has to explain that to me. I just don't get it. I'm trying to like work around it and trying to figure out if there's a way that I can read this and feel it that isn't super basic and reactionary, defensive, like But no, everyone would if you believe that you're really trying and you're doing well and you're doing your best, why would you not deserve someone else who's doing their best? Why would you not deserve their best and not want to handle them at their worst? Like that's, you know, there's a huge difference from being supportive and recognizing that people make mistakes and being able to handle someone at their worst. That's a huge disparity. Like that doesn't make, to me, they're not on. It's a ballpark of a difference. Like that doesn't make any sense. Anyway, I don't know what I just did here. If I solidified my own pre-existing notions or if I really figured anything out at all. But I'm going to call it, and we'll see you on another time.